are live at the table again for another podcast at the table. And tonight we have with us Johanna at the table, and we've got Luke at the table, and our stable diets, Adam and Pastor Jono. And it's been a great day. It's been a busy day. At the moment, we are getting ready for our hospice hoedown, which is happening next Saturday night at the 17th. And as a church, we've set aside the hospice in Southland, and we're going to raise money for them. And we're going to do that by line dancing, country music, 3-course meal. It's going to be great. And so all hands are on deck for that.
Things we do for charity.
Things we do for charity. It's awesome. And it's country. And we all know that God is in country. Yeah, don't we? Really? I mean, is he?
Well, it's funny because I like both kinds of music. I like country and western.
Oh, you do both?
Yes.
Yes, I don't do country. I don't do western.
Okay, right.
So, it's awesome. Hey, tonight, as advertised, we've titled this one Addiction to Freedom. And we just really want to open up that discussion that ultimately there's freedom in Christ. And I think everyone here around the table 100% believes that. There is freedom in Christ. And in fact, in John 8:36 is, who the Son sets free is free indeed. And so we want to talk about the journey and the miracle that comes out of a journey from addiction to freedom. And so I've invited Luke, and Luke's going to just share his testimony, his story about that. So Luke, tell us, how has your journey been? You haven't always been a Christian, is that right?
Nah, definitely not.
Yeah.
I guess I'll start at childhood. So my parents split up when I was about 4 years old. I grew up in Invercargill with my mother, and my father, he was in Dunedin, then later on in life moved through to Wanaka. Looking back on my school days, I guess you could say, like, my mother, she was a believer, but we weren't raised within the church, so we didn't have that understanding of who Jesus actually is. I guess going into primary school, I was always a full-on kid. Everything I did was intense, whether it was soccer or rugby, or when it come to athletic season, I'd be running up and down the track day in, day out.
Wow. So you're quite active.
Full on active, and I used to win a lot too. I guess, probably just those hard yards you put in, eh?
Yeah.
Going through primary school, I guess that was about the time that I kind of stopped trying at school. There was just a switch in my brain where I was over it. I sort of more went to primary just for my lunch and to hang out with my friends. Last year in primary was when I first, I think, started hanging out with older kids and started stealing and silly things like that. Through to intermediate, things got worse. I continued to, I guess, glorify the bad stuff. I used to enjoy showing off in front of the class and getting kicked out, and that was kind of me, like trying to make people laugh.
Was that around sort of trying to make yourself feel better, or was it
it was trying to make myself feel better.
Yeah.
And I guess just like insecurities of a young fella, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I guess there was feelings of being not having what the other kids had, coming in at that sort of age. Got through to high school, and that's where I guess addiction started, naturally gravitating towards the bad kids at school. We started smoking and dabbling with weed and alcohol. Funny story, first time I drank alcohol, I blacked out and woke up the next morning and my 2 front teeth had been smashed out. So
wow.
it was a great start to a pretty messy journey, but I didn't learn from that either.
And you had no recollection, no.
Nah, so I rang my schoolmates the next day. I was like, I've got no front teeth. And they're like, you fell off the bike. You bike straight past your mum's driveway and come off.
Oh, man.
Sorry, how old were you at this?
I'd say 14, 15 at the latest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So got through high school, left into 5th form, and basically moved to Wanaka and decided I'm done with school. I'm going to be a tradesman. My dad was up there at the time, so I just sort of went up there and gave life a crack. But because I'd already had the taste for the drugs and the alcohol, it definitely didn't take long for it to become a daily occurrence. Whether it was weed every day, alcohol was definitely my favourite at that time. But I just loved the rush of it, like the parties. I found, looking back in my mental head, like I enjoyed the party more than I enjoyed life. So I guess from that age, my journey in addiction was a constant battle from there, where I guess my heart continued to get harder and things continued to get darker. I couldn't hold down a job. I gravitated more and more towards crime and feeding my addictions by any means necessary, basically. So I guess, yeah, like the morals had gone out the window, and same thing again because of the crowds and the people that we're hanging around with. It all just become a normal life.
And do you think you were kind of searching for something through this? Like, were you trying to fill something, or I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but what was driving you to do all this?
I just loved it.
Right.
Like, to be honest, I loved the rush. I loved the buzz. I loved that. Now looking back, that false sense of freedom. Not being a part of what the norm in the world is.
So not having to conform.
Yeah, just not conforming, real authority issues. And I guess a growing amount of shame, guilt, and condemnation over my life over the certain things that I was doing. It was basically girls, fights, drama, job to job, place to place, on the run from the police, in and out of prison, and just hopelessness, really. I remember looking back and I was standing in front of my mirror in prison, and this probably was about the 3rd time I went in, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I remember just feeling like I was a monster. Like I couldn't even stare at myself. Like I just felt that ugly inside, I guess. I always had the support of my mother, God bless her soul. She's in glory now. So all those years in addiction, Mum kept her door open. Whenever I'd get out of jail, she'd take me on.
Wow.
I guess in those times, like every time I'd see Mum's face or my dad's, I'd tell them, like I'm ready to change. And deep down, like I wanted to, but I just didn't know how to. And
so there was a genuine heart desire to change.
Yeah.
It
was, but it wasn't something that would last for long.
Right.
Like basically as soon as I would get another taste, whether it was booze, weed, meth, whatever it was, it would just grab me. There was never any on-off button for me. So if I was drinking, I'd be that guy that would still be going at 5 the next day, if not rolling into the next day and carrying on. The worst stages of that drinking stuff, like I couldn't even really leave the house. Like I'd get up the next morning, start drinking again, and just carry on and on and on. And I think the worst stage went, I think I drank constantly, day in, day out, partying for probably 8-9 months. And this was in Dunedin. It was constant chaos. I'm talking a lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of women, a lot of just stuff that I'm not proud of. But it was life at that stage. I had a freaky moment after that. I remember drinking for that time in such a solid period that I remember going to walk up the road in South Dunedin one day, and my body literally stopped functioning properly. Like my brain, I was trying to walk up the street. I don't know what happened to me, but my legs just stopped operating the way they should. And I remember freaking right out, like on the side of the road, thinking like, I think I've just cooked myself, basically. Thank God I didn't. And the next morning after waking up, you'd think you'd learn, but no, I just carried on. When it comes to, I guess, the damage that was caused, like my dad and all the Bowler family, they were always there. I've got amazing cousins and stuff. But through those years of addiction, I'd only usually gravitate towards family that were in addiction, because all the other family that weren't, like, I knew I couldn't be around for long, because I would just want to go drink and do drugs. That was where my heart was.
Did you feel judged at the time with the ones that didn't drink and do drugs?
Nah, not judged. I think more just felt that I was letting them down. And that was, mainly my mother's side of the family.
Right.
Solid Christians. And they always loved me and encouraged me. And I think even some of the other cousins on that side used to spin out because of the way I'd show up at uncle's place or whoever's house. And they'd just, encourage me, I guess. So I definitely feel blessed for having them in my life. I guess, like depression, anxiety, anger, all the sexual stuff, everything else that comes with that life of sin was who I was. And I'm not glorifying any of it, because like I said, I would not change a thing today. But I still wouldn't wish my kids to walk the same path I walked, One thing that touched me tonight before coming here was leaving the house, and my 5-year-old boy prays for me. And then as we're all sitting here, my wee niece, she rings up, and she's 2, just about 3. She prays for me, and I praise God for that, the way that he's moved on my life and my family's life, and so many others around us. So the life of an addict, everything's intense. Everything was crazy. I had a lot of ups and downs. Sometimes things would be good. Sometimes things would be a real mess. Sometimes I would think things are going to be good, and they'd end up a real mess, and I'd get hurt and more broken and go deeper into whatever it was I was going into. But like I said, like in the height of it, I didn't see a way out. I just thought it was normal, and I guess I'd submitted to the fact that I was just going to be a drunk and a drug addict the rest of my life. The people I looked up to, not the sort of people I should have looked up to, but I guess I was always looking for love, but in all the wrong places. And for some reason, in that cycle, you'd just constantly have people that would just push you deeper into the insanity of life. No belief in God. As far as I remember as a child, I remember God bless. At night time, Mum would say it. And going to my uncle's house at Christmas, and always knowing that Uncle Johnny was going to be doing a prayer at the table before lunch. So when God revealed himself to me, I was in prison. It was my last night in there, yelling out the peephole, telling this guy I was going to kick his head in. And I had a demon literally show up next to me. It threw me into the wall. I hit the wall. It started speaking a whole bunch of stuff over my life. I remember getting hit with like this fear because, you know, to me that realm wasn't real. But it was, and it was right in front of me. And I jumped in my bunk. I remember lying there and could still feel this presence in the corner of the room. And then that was the first time that God encountered my heart. And basically, his presence hit me. The whole cell turned into like a white light. I remember just being completely smashed. Like, when I say I'd done a lot of drugs, I'd done a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol, and nothing would have even touched the sides of what I experienced in that moment.
Yeah.
It was like the most smashed I'd ever been, but it was like the love of the Father just hitting me. All I heard him say in that moment was, you're an alcoholic, you're going to be free, and you're going to help change people's lives. And then I looked to like the left of where my bunk was, and I could see this huge glowing golden cross coming off the wall. It felt like I was being sucked into it. And I remember just lying there and just thinking, God's real, you know. And the next morning, the prison guards opened my cell, and I was still high as a kite on the presence of God. I walked out into the wing and started looking around at all my brothers, and I remember I started to weep, like my heart started welling up because I could feel how lost everybody was. I went to court that day, and I shouldn't have got out, but I got out and ended up moving up to my mum's again up in Christchurch. By this stage, she was like, I can't stay in Invercargill because every time my son gets out, he just falls back in. So there was partly a move for family, but there was a big pull in her heart just to get me out of that place. And thank God he encountered me that last night. I remember speaking to some of my close mates on the outside and telling them what had happened. They were all like, brother, you've finally gone insane. You've lost your marbles. But the thing was, I knew it was real. From that moment, no one could ever tell me that God wasn't real, because I knew he's real. And I also knew the enemy was real. From that point, I guess you could say there was a change in my heart. There was an actual want to change, and I'm going to try now. So I'm going to do my probation. I'm going to do what the system tells me to do, and I'm going to try and get out the other side of this, which when I reflect now, it was like I was living that Roman 7 life of just trying to do everything on my own, pushing forward, and also falling in and out of addiction, but knowing that it's not me now. Like, I remember going and drinking with heaps of my close homies, and we were all getting on the piss and talking about doing all this crazy stuff. And I remember inside I was just like, this is not who I am.
Wow.
But because it was what I knew, it was what I'd done.
So had you previous to that, had you ever had that feeling of this is not who I am? That was solely after that encounter.
Yeah.
There was like, once you know type sort of.
Yeah. So it was like my heart had gotten so hard from sin and from walking the life that I was living, that to explain it the easiest way, I go back to when I was a kid and I first stole. And I remember this intense conviction that come over me as a child, knowing what I was doing was wrong. As I continued to walk the path and I continued to do what I was doing, those things become normal, so the conviction was no longer there. After I had that encounter with God in prison, I was cleansed. So I look at it like I was washed clean. And So going back into that old stuff, it no longer felt right, and I knew that it wasn't right. So I guess trying to live to get a job, to work, to hold a job down, to do the right things, and to try and be a normal part of society, but still having all the bros around me that I still love them, you know, like I love my brothers, like whether I knew them before the Lord or in the Lord, like my heart for those bros is, it's deep. Some of them aren't right, some of them are, but, you know, I've always got faith that, you know, God can move on whoever he chooses. You know, he done it to me, he can do it to any of them too. Through that cycle, I ended up with this girl. She become my God. She was, it was a mess. In and out of addiction, realizing that I can't drink because every time I'd drink, I'd start fights or start big arguments with her, or just the chaos would break out. So I guess through that season, it was like keeping my job, trying to keep her happy, trying to manage my addictions myself. So I turned to weed, and I started preaching to everyone, smoke weed, because weird to say, but when I'd smoke weed, I wasn't going to kill anyone. If I drank, that was by that stage, it was a real fear, like I used to freak out on what would actually happen, especially when it come to the violent side, like the alcohol. I don't know what it was, but maybe because I'm part Samoan, can't handle it, but bad things would go down. And I remember when me and her split, I plummeted again, like into meth and drinking heavily and basically wrecking my life. And I felt like I'd come a long way over those 4 years, but reality was I hadn't even begun. You know, I was just trying to manage addiction, which it don't work. I look at it this way, like if someone was to sit there and we go to a family meal and they were to pull out a bottle of wine for the whole family and pour a little glass for each of them, I would have just cracked up laughing and been like, what is wrong with you? It's like, where's the rest? Because those few that, you know, for me, that just sent me on that tangent. There was a few more encounters with the Lord through that season of life, and there was a real, like I said, like that pull just keep getting more and more and more, like. And when me and the ex broke up, that was where I remember coming to another crossroads. And by this stage, quite a few of the bros were gang members, were getting real heavily into that stuff. And I remember thinking, like, I can either walk that path or I can just keep trying. But the thought of my mother was always the thing that would stop me from going completely all in, because, like I said, she was a beautiful lady, and just the love and respect that I have for her, had for her, and still have. You know, I honour her for who she was as a mother, because I know not a lot of mothers that are straight would have that strength to be able to keep their doors open for their children as they're actively living that lifestyle of chaos, and still be able to just love them and tell them off and give them a clip around the ear and deal with the stuff that mum dealt with, you know. So things got real dark real quick, and that was when I had another encounter that took me through to Alcoholics Anonymous. Nice. This was 28th April 2014. I remember God had basically spoke to me clear as day that day, and he said Alcoholics Anonymous. So I walked inside and I told mum, AA, like Alcoholics Anonymous. She looked it up and it had the Serenity Prayer on the website. I I remember reading it, and then she goes, "Oh, son, there's a meeting just around the corner at St. Barnabas." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, cool, well, I'll go." She didn't know what had happened the night before, but it was gnarly. Yeah, not good. I won't go into it, but I remember that night, there was like, as I was walking to the church from Mum's, there was like two sides of me. There was like one side saying, "You're a Bundy, how you going to score pussy, how you going to have fun, how you going to enjoy your life." The other side was just a simple, "God told you to go, you need to go." So as I walked, I'm going through this wrestle, and I get to where the church is, and there was like a sign out the front of the church. And then I remember like the anxiety just took over, and I started to run. And then I heard a voice say, clear as day, "Luke, come back." And I turned round, looked, no one was there, walked into this church and sat in the circle. And I looked up, and the Serenity Prayer was up on the wall. And I remember just reading it. "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." And I remember saying to God, I just said, "God, like, I'm sick and tired of living the life I'm living, and I need you to show me who you are and to help me." And he did. Like, the meeting that night, I remember all the people that spoke, it felt like they were speaking directly to me, whether it was the little old lady that was sitting on one chair to the homeless dude that's sitting on the opposite side of the room. It was like everybody that talked, it hit my heart. It felt like God was talking through the people to me. That's how it felt in the experience. And the meeting ended, and there was an old guy beside me from Invercargill. And I remember I stood up and I looked at him and I said, "Brother, like, we're all crazy." And he starts cracking up laughing and goes, "Yeah, no, we are." And I was like, "No, awesome." And he's like, "Come out and we'll have a yarn in my truck." So I jumped in the truck, and he goes, "Luke, do you believe in God?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And I started telling him about the encounters. He thought the same. This guy's bonkers. But he said, "You need to start praying." And I said, "Yeah, sweet, bro. Like, what do I say?" He said, "Say the Serenity Prayer. Just give your life to God every day, and just surrender and come to meetings every day." So I'll never forget that night, like going home and standing in the back lawn at Mum's. And I remember looking up at the stars, and it was like I could finally see again. That's how it felt. Like, I remember just this peace that I don't have to do this on my own anymore. Like, I can give my life to God, and he's going to do what only he can do. Because, like I said, I'd tried time and time and time and time again to try and manage it or to beat it, and I got nowhere. So next morning, I went into work because I'd missed work all the last, well, probably from about Wednesday to Sunday the week before. The pattern was getting worse and worse, so I basically had a meeting with my boss, and I remember going into the meeting and I prayed to God and I said, "God, I'm just going to tell them what I've been up to." So I walked into this meeting, they were sitting at the table, and I said, so I've been stealing hours off you every week. I don't actually have a driver's license. I've been using your van to do drug runs. I've been ripping off hours. I've been stealing petrol. I've been doing, basically operating in a way I shouldn't be operating. So you can fire me now or call the cops or whatever it is. And they said, "No, Luke, like, you can keep your job." And I remember walking out of that place and just thinking, like, "God, you're nuts. Like, I should be getting locked up or lost my job."
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, like, every day I was going to meetings and praying and just building that relationship with God, but there was still no Jesus in this point of my journey. Like, God was there, but the revelation of Jesus was not. And I started to recognize, like, the relationship I had with God versus the relationship that others in the room had. It was different. So I could never talk on the encounters or the things that had happened in my journey without, I never felt like people got it. My brother gets clean and sober, comes back to New Zealand and jumps into AA and NA and starts his journey. He was the first person I prayed for other than myself. He had an encounter and ended up coming home too and jumping on that journey. We ended up opening up a cafe, which ended up becoming an empire. It went from 1 to 14 over a sort of 4 or 5 year period. Same thing, like a lot of testimony through that, like of just business. I remember standing and going to my first investment meeting and just praying that God would give me the words to say and that I'd be able to talk to these people. And because I was so open about my past and where I'd come from, I was telling everybody about God, about recovery, about, you know, that we can get out of it. Same thing, a few of my bros around me now, they were looking at me on Facebook thinking I was on meth or I was doing whatever I was doing, but God was doing his thing. Through the cafe, once we opened that up, we hired a few Christians that worked for us. And they'd try and tell me about Jesus, and I'd sort of be like, you know, nah, like that Jesus stuff, it's rubbish. Like, I'm just going to keep doing the God thing, you know. But then I fell into a relapse on the weed, and I remember it started from going and catching up with an old mate, had a bong, and then I'm trapped for like 2 weeks straight. I'm pretty sure my little sister drove from Wanaka to Christchurch and found me greened out because she noticed on Facebook that I'd stopped putting up all these posts. So she just knew something wasn't right, which snapped me out of it. I just need to do one more little thing. So with the addiction, between that period of the encounter with God and coming to AA, there was a moment with my nephew. I remember sitting out in this garage and I was blazed out of my mind, and my nephew always loved me because he thought I was like the crazy uncle or whatever. And she showed up with him, and I remember just looking at him and I just knew that he knew that I wasn't right, and that was something that hit my heart, you know, with addiction. And then fast forwarding, the day that I got baptized was the 11th of July 2015, which is actually his birthday.
Wow.
To the day. And God spoke to me before I got baptized, and he said, it's your nephew's day of birth. It's your day to be reborn. And that was the day everything changed. Like, I remember Sam and that took me out to the beach, whole way out there in my mind thinking, what's getting dunked in water going to do? All these other doubts, all this other stuff. They dunked me under the water. As I went under, I remember same thing, like thinking not much. Come out and I got blinded again. It was like just a white light. Couldn't really stand. They had me like under the arms. And as my vision started to come back, I could see these two like huge angels up on the summit of the hills. And they were just staring straight at me. And I remember started to yell. And then I looked out from where the angels were, and there was an old big stone church with like big walls around it. And the walls just come crumbling down in the spirit. And they started walking around the beach, doing what Christians do, praying for people to get out of wheelchairs and all that type of stuff. And I'm just kind of enjoying the high, going with it. They dropped me off at my car, and I fleshed out. So I remember thinking about the day, and it's weird to say, but I drove straight to my dealer's house, got a bag, drove home to mum's in the garage, chopped up. I'll quickly say this because I'm feeling convicted. Mum never allowed me to do any of that at home, but I chopped it up, grabbed the bong, one bong, nothing happens, two bongs, nothing happens, go to have a third, and here clear as day, throw that away and follow me. So I stand up.
Wow.
I stand up, I walk outside, I throw the bong over the neighbour's fence, the weed over the neighbour's fence. I sit back down, and I'd been given a Bible months before. So I grabbed the word, brought it over, flipped it open, and it opened to where Jesus was being walked to the cross. And the words of the page were almost coming off, and they felt like they were hitting me. And then each passage, my head would get pushed back, it felt like, and I'd feel like I was drowning. And then I'd come forward, and then more of it would happen. And it got through to where Jesus re-rose, and I can't really put that into words, but I remember dropping forward and just started to weep, like weeping profusely. And the page blew over, and it had Luke, my name, at the top of the page. And then I heard God say to me, "You're now sitting at my table." And in that moment, that's when everything changed. Like, I couldn't stop reading the word. I couldn't stop worshiping God. I couldn't stop thanking him. I couldn't stop just pursuing who Jesus actually is. He revealed himself to me, and I've recognized through that process that as I continued to go into his word did become flesh. Like, his word started to transform my mind, started to heal up all that brokenness, and he started to give me the strength to actually look at myself and be completely real. And when I say completely real, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly. And because of the wiring that I'd gone through, I remember coming into the church and I'd be sharing about what I'm going through, and I'd get some funny looks, but at the same time, I didn't care. I was like, I'm a son, and I know my father, and I know that he is using me to help get other people involved in this move. And as I sit here today, like, I'm married to a beautiful wife. I've got 3 kids. I've got businesses. I've got a whole bunch of friends and people in my world that, like, I don't have to worry. I can let my friends stay at home now, and I don't have to worry about the house getting ripped off. I've got a roof over my head, power in the meter, and food in the cupboards, and life wasn't always that way, but it's those simple things that I still get great joy in. I might be 8-9 years on this path with Jesus, but he constantly and is always blowing me away more and more on his goodness, his graciousness, and just the love that he has for us as sons and as daughters. Like, even today, I'm perfectly imperfect. Like, I'm far from the finished product. I'm still rough around the edges, but I know that Jesus died for me, he loves me, and he rose again to defeat death and to give me true freedom. Like, as you said, Pastor Jono, like, who the Son sets free is free indeed. And in the beginning, I thought, freedom is freedom from drugs and alcohol and anger and stealing and lying and whatever. But what he's taught me is I'm free from me. Like, I'm free from me. And the torment that I got into in my journey and in my life, the decisions that I made, like, I ain't proud of none of it. So it's the same thing. I'm not glorifying anything. What I'm doing is I'm saying that from the life I lived to where I'm at today, like, I couldn't even picture in my wildest dreams to be living the life that I'm living now. And I do it all with peace. It doesn't mean everything's good. Mum passed on to glory last year. And I can wholeheartedly and honestly say, even through that, I had peace. Like, and that lady was my rock. In my early days in recovery, my sponsor said to me, what's the biggest thing that could come against you on this journey to recovery, and I instantly said, my mum dying. And he said, you need to start praying then, and pray that God would strengthen you for whenever this time comes. No matter when it is, just pray that God would strengthen you. And then through that, I remember sitting with mum after she told me she got cancer. I walked outside and just put on worship, and God basically just completely undone me. I remember I seen my mum passed in a vision, and I was like, I started pretty much getting that wrestle on, like, you know, I'm not doing this. And then through that journey of walking it out, and you know, my beautiful sister looking after mum for all those times, and connecting with mum, and just seeing what the Lord had done in her heart, and the way that God used her. Like, she's dying of cancer, she's in the hospital, and she's wandering around the hospital sharing Jesus to everyone. The doctors are trying to speak all this stuff over her, and she's not listening. She's going, no, only God knows when I go. You know, her last words were, God is faithful, and he is. You know, like, he held me together through that. He held my sister together, he held my brother together. All of us are still clean, all of us are still sober. You know, like, I could have done my mum's dying, I'm going to pick up the bottle again and I'm going to smash a few people over and deal with all this emotional pain by doing what I used to do. But God just said, no, like, what you're walking through is actually building you, and you're not losing your mum. You're actually heaven's gaining another daughter. And it was like, through that, even the day that mum passed, I was out buying shoes, doing what I'd always do. My sister was there. Walked into the hospital, sister's a mess, give her a hug, comfort her, walk into the room and just look at mum, and all I could see was how beautiful she was. And that wrecked me, you know, like, to be able to look at my mother passed on and think, how beautiful are you? And, you know, like, there's a few scriptures, like, to do with the sting of death. And I was protected from the sting of death from my own mother, you know, and I praise God for that. God taught me the strength of love. So as we walk this path, like, and as his love continually pours into us as sons and daughters, that he just wants to pour out, you know, but he can only pour out if we actually get out of his way. And it's like that obedience to sonship, to knowing him, to growing with him, like, nothing else matters. Like, and when it comes to that round and around and around the mountain stuff, like, for anyone out there listening, you don't have to keep going around and around and around that same mountain. Like, you can ask and you shall receive. Like, if you ask God to come into your life, if you ask Jesus to reveal himself, he will. And if you bring that darkness, wherever you're at on that journey, into the light, you know, he is faithful. There is support out there, you know, there is people that can offer help and support and love and guidance.
Yes, there is.
In those areas when it comes to addiction or mental health or all those other places addiction takes us into. So, like, my encouragement to all of you out there is, you're not alone, you know, like, there's so many of us that walk through battles and walk through struggles and walk through some heavy stuff, some gnarly stuff. Like, my story and some of the bros I walk with, mine's nothing. Like, you know, I feel so blessed to have lived the life I've lived. But like I said, Jesus is the key, and he's the one that, if you allow him to take over, he will. Like, Holy Ghost will take over that vessel. Like, you know, where the flesh is against the spirit. If you've lived in addiction and you're trapped in that stuff, well, I'm telling you now, the flesh cycles that have been trained into your body, those brain pathways, they ain't right. But thank God we have a gracious Father and a King that loves us and is willing to teach us who we are in Him so that we can then overcome. Like I said, I still ain't perfect. My journey in Christ has not been perfect. But I can say I would never go back into that old life and walk away from Christ. Like I could not. Like it makes me feel sick. Like I'm at a point now where if I get angry towards someone or I feel those violent things trying to raise up, I feel sick. Like I got to kill the flesh. I got to kill those old ways, and I have to do it with Him. You know.
And I think that's the cool thing, because I've heard testimonies where the addiction, they you meet Christ and everything goes, and it's just one day you were addicted, the next day it's like everything's changed, but the miracle is actually a journey as well.
Yes,
the journey is the miracle. Does that make?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they do meet Jesus and they're not healed straight away, and they question that and they fight that, and you talked about before how having people around you to help you with that walk as well as Jesus, and because He puts these people in your way, He puts them there for you to get that help, to use these people if you're in another way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because like you say, so many people, these famous testimonies, or the ones that you often get to hear, is black and white, one day one thing and one day the next, and I don't think that's reality for so many people. And that might be for people that haven't walked the same life as you, but they've had what they might consider to be lesser addictions or lesser problems, but they're still really big to them, and they still struggle to overcome them and bring them to God, or bring them to Jesus, and feel like maybe it hasn't worked. And what does that mean? Does that mean He didn't want me, or does that mean it's a one-time thing, or keep going? Yeah,
that hits me on. I remember the guy that baptized me, and we'd be talking, and that's where I learned, the weight of sin is death. So regardless of the level of sin that you're entrenched in before the Lord, the feeling's the same. So it's like that lady whose chicken died and she's completely distraught for 10 years, to her, that's just as real as losing our mother.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? So whether it's you've slept with 100 women, or you've just stuffed up because you've been brought up in a Christian home and slept with one, that weight still carries the same devastation in a son or daughter's life if they're not willing to see it for what it actually is and bring it before Him.
Yeah.
It's a real good point. Yeah.
And I think that's the awesome thing about your story and your journey is your family. It's like the generational, it's changed. It's broken.
Yeah.
A generational, because now your kids are going to know what, they're brought up knowing the reality of Jesus. They're brought up with mum and dad who so the cycle has been,
yes, it's been broken.
It's been broken.
Yes.
And that is the amazing thing, because it's a cycle that's just, it's stopped. It's like lining up I saw a picture once where you line up a whole heap of matches and you light it. It just goes one to one, but all you got to do is remove one.
Yes.
And it stops. And because generational, you must, in your role as a counselor, Johnny, you must see a lot of generational stuff.
Yeah. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of it. You're seeing you see one person doing the same as the other one. Like if you're talking about abuse, for instance, it's one in the family. If somebody's been abused, then in the next family, that child can grow up and be the same as their dad or the same as their mum, which is either submissive or abusive. But there doesn't seem to be that middle ground. And when God comes in, when Jesus comes in and he touches one of these people, that pulls that match out. It takes that match away, and now all of a sudden this person is making changes in their lives, and Jesus is walking with them, and it's so good to see when that happens. And it's really hard to do this without Jesus. You know, I sit in my office sometimes and I've got, non-Christians in my room, and I see that if only you knew Jesus, I think that, but we work on, okay, how are we going to make the changes here? And as you said, it was harder and harder. You can't do it by yourself. No. And you need someone there to help you. And Jesus is one that needs to help all people. I totally agree with you. Yeah. I'm just about crying sometimes when I come out of my office and saying, you only need Jesus. It's just amazing. But yeah, he can help you, as well as, you working hard on those tools that you're given to make those changes. Because
you've had to work on those changes. It hasn't. It's not an easy. You have. Nah. Do you know what I mean?
It's hectic.
Yeah.
I've constantly thanked God for that season in AA and NA. Just listening to the language of the heart of other addicts and other alcoholics, and just being able to see myself, facing myself was probably one of the hardest things I ever done. Was to actually sit there and peel back what I could remember, because my addiction, there's a lot that's gone, which is a weird thing to say, but that's how out the gate I was. But I remember doing my step 4, and it was like writing down all the people I hated, all the crimes I'd committed, all the stuff that was really shaming my heart or hurting my relationship with others. And the thing I learned through I remember getting to the end of the step 4, and I just sat there looking at this paper. It was probably like 20 pages, maybe slightly less, but it was a lot of pages. And I remember going, I'm completely insane. Like, the stuff I've done, the hatred I'm holding on to, the judgments that I've made are loopy. They're just being real.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, so I'm angry at this guy, but I done this to him. So now he's tried coming against me, so I'm going to attack him. And it's like the mentality
round and round.
The cycle was so hectic. Like the Lord stretches us in character, as we grow. Like in my early days in recovery or in this journey, like the littlest thing could become an issue for me for a whole day, And then over the years of walking, it takes so much more for me to get caught in something where it's actually like, this is affecting me and taking me out of that place of peace. But I know now through my journey in sonship that when that stuff comes up, I have to snap out of it, because I can't operate the way that I used to operate. I can still feel that way, but I cannot operate that way.
Yeah.
Because of Christ within me.
Yes.
It's like,
I remember talking with you a wee while ago, and it's that whole thing of, it doesn't define, like it's that's what I did. That's not who I am.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And I found that powerful because that's a total shift in mindset.
Yes.
Because it's like, that's not who I am. That's just what I did.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, like I look at my old life before Christ, and it's like a sick dream. Like it's honestly hard to believe that I could even go into the places I've been into.
Yeah.
Like as in mentally, like that. Like a prison was nothing. It's the prison of the mind that was the worst place to be.
Yes.
Like that constant beating yourself down. You're not good enough. You're never going to make it. You know, look at what he's got. Look at what she's got. Look at this. Look at that. Like the pity party stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and pity parties don't help.
No.
You know, like I'm constantly walking with men and with people on this journey, and it's like you constantly see glimmers of your old self, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to see. But unless that person can see it within themselves, can they see it? It's not up to me to shine that light every time I notice it, unless the Lord pushes that path. But it's like you know, even today, like things can happen that throw me out of kilter. And it's like, I just need to humble myself, because if I don't stay in humility before him and I take control of my life again, things will get messy real quick. Like it's not a long-term thing. Like I fully know if I tried to run off in that other direction, I'm getting wiped out real quick. You know, I'm not even scared of the enemy. I'm scared of what Father will do.
yeah. And I think that's the cool thing, because all through this story, it's just the hope of Jesus. And whether someone's watching this now and listening to the journey, or whether someone in 6 months' time is listening to the journey, at every point there's always hope in Jesus.
Yes.
And that's the amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That there's hope in Jesus.
Yeah.
And that Jesus really does change your life.
Yeah. He's step by step that he changes it, and you've showed that in the story that you've told us, your story. And it's just each step he's just taken you to a different place and a different place and a different place. So it's not the healing straight away. There is some healing, but then eventually he grabs you and he says, I'm going to work on that today. Okay, now it's time to work on that, and he gives you a slap.
Yeah. It's hard
Okay,
work.
and then he tells you to work on that, and he gives you another slap, because you go, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, Lord.
But he's got a funny way of pushing us to deal with that.
A very funny way of pushing us. And so it's just, you know, allowing him to take it step by step, instead of seeing the end and going, oh my goodness, I am so bad.
Yeah.
You know, you're not actually bad. It's just the fact that you just have to take one step at a time, and God will heal one step at a time. You can't cope with it all at once.
No.
It's too hard.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, but know you're loved anyway.
Yeah.
Even though you're still failing and failing and failing.
It's like surgery.
It's okay.
It's like a massive surgery.
Surgery,
you know?
great.
A surgeon's not going to go and fix, if you got a massive, I don't know, medical issue, they're not going to take everything out at once.
No.
You end up with multiple surgeries because they're doing one thing at a time. And,
Yes.
And the ultimate surgeon is the one that's doing that
Doing
work.
the work. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's so good. Yeah.
And the reality is, and I know we've got to wrap up soon, but the reality is, everybody has things
yes.
we have to work through.
Everybody.
Every single person's got something. And I would suggest that at any given time, if we're honest with God, he's got his finger on something.
Yes.
And I know it's that there's that, and I know Pastor Lowell, he shares about a lot, is the same, search my heart. And if you're thinking, well, I got nothing, all you have to do is say that prayer, God, search my heart. And sure enough, something will be there. So it's a journey that actually, as believers, we're all on, because none of us are perfect.
I see it as a door. There's a door open in your heart that you've you've shut tight and you don't want to open that, and the God knocks on that door, that particular area in your life, and says, I want in there now.
We're
And you
shine some light
open
on
the
that
door
one.
and all the boxes fall out. Everything falls out. Because it's just like...
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like being grateful for conviction, like it's an amazing thing. Like when Holy Spirit is convicting us of the path we're walking, whatever it may be, like he's not doing it out of a place of judgment.
No,
he's doing
not.
it from a place of love.
It's love.
Yes.
Love.
And it's hard for us to see sometimes that we need to let these things go and what's going to be on the other side. But only he knows it.
Yeah.
You get it? He knows the beginning and the end. He knows the way to pursue us and to get us into those corners where we need to be.
Yes.
Like I said, we constantly watch boys run off the rails. And it's weird. In the beginning, it hurt. Then I got to a place where I thought, praise God, because it's like some of those boys need that place. They need to get locked up again. They need to fall back into the traps so that they can actually taste and see. They've got to go back to the pig pen.
Yeah. I was just about this. Exactly right. That prodigal son where he is in, like, there is no more. There's no more bottom. This is at that point. He just goes, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I've got to go home.
To some extent, it's like, how do you know how good tastes until you've tasted bad? If you don't know what bad tastes like, then good doesn't taste great. Until you've had that comparison. Yeah.
The funny one, like, there's that Johnny Cash song, God's Gonna Cut You Down. So I quite often will send that to the boys who have run off.
Speaking through Johnny Cash.
The great prophet,
That's good.
Hey, it's been great hearing your story and having the discussion around it and just again just coming back to that. There's hope in Jesus, and that Jesus is the answer through a journey.
Yes,
and it's just it's so cool, and I want to thank you, Luke, for sharing. Johanna, thank you for sharing as well, and having that input, and it's just good to talk and good to chat, and as I said, if you've been listening to this and you got questions or you want to reach out, we are here, and you can comment in there, you can message us on our Facebook page, and if you've got questions for Luke or Johanna or just want that help, that help, we are here, and but it's been great discussion. Thank you for guys for coming in, and we look forward to another At the Table, and that's us. That's a wrap. Awesome.
Hallelujah.
Good one.